creative ways. I think it's really wonderful. I'm privileged to be able to introduce our guest, and I think it's also really significant and wonderful that Steve Flowers, who is a master of mindfulness and compassion, is here today when, for us, there's a lot of tenderness being stirred up with the memorial candle, with remembrances of Shelley, and I know for many people here, and of course across the country, there is a mixture of emotions going on with the verdict that came through last week. Or this week, rather, excuse me. So it's a wonderful opportunity for us to be present in what we teach and know in religious science, to be open in our mind and heart, and to walk through what we need to walk through in our reactions and our feelings about this and so many things, and to do so with mindfulness and compassion. So Spirit was prescient and wise enough, as always, to have it be that Steve would be our guest today. And so I'd like to introduce him for you. Steve Flowers is the founder and director of the Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction at Enloe Medical Center here in Chico. He is a longtime practitioner of meditation and teacher since 1997. Steve has provided training in mindfulness to thousands of people, including physicians, health professionals, and private clients. He is also the author of several books, including Living with Your Heart Wide Open, of which we have one copy left in the bookstore, hint, hint. And I'm sure maybe we could, he's not the celebrity type, but he might even autograph it for you. So he's going to be available for that after service. And we're happy to say that if this whets your appetite, you have another opportunity this week on Thursday evening. Steve is returning to give a special workshop, and he will be here to speak and guide us through some mindfulness practices as well. So join us for that Thursday night at 6:30. And today he is going to be speaking on investigating the nature of compassion. See what I mean? Perfect timing. So for now, would you please help me welcome Steve Flowers.
Thank you for that music. I think I get it now why you guys come here. I've just been flooded with love and kindness and welcoming, and my heart's been broken open already. And wow. Thank you for letting me be here. I've met a number of friends here that come here. I'm delighted to see you. Some of you we haven't seen for years. I'm going to talk about compassion today. And I thought to start with a poem. Naomi Shihab Nye, on kindness. Before you know what kindness is, you must lose things. Feel the future dissolve in a moment like salt in a weakened broth. What you held in your hand, what you counted and carefully saved, all this must go. So you know how desolate the landscape can be between the regions of kindness. How you ride and ride thinking the bus will never stop. The passengers eating maize and chicken will stare out the window forever. Before you learn the tender gravity of kindness, you must travel where the Indian in a white poncho lies dead by the side of the road. You must see how this could be you. How he too was someone who journeyed through the night with plans and the simple breath that kept him alive. Before you know kindness as the deepest thing inside, you must know sorrow as the other deepest thing. You must wake up with sorrow. You must speak to it until your voice catches the thread of all sorrows and you see the size of the cloth. And it's only then that kindness makes sense anymore. Only kindness that ties your shoes, that sends you out into the day to mail letters and purchase bread. Only kindness that raises its head from the crowd of the world to say, it is I, you have been looking for. It is I you have been looking for. And then goes with you everywhere, like a shadow or a friend. My work at the medical center, where I've been now for a long time, working not only as a psychotherapist, but leading the mindfulness-based stress reduction clinic, I've had thousands of people come through this program. Most of them come in on physician referrals. Most of them suffering from chronic pain and injuries, diseases and conditions that the doctors have come to their limit and can no longer help them with. They've tried all kinds of medicines, all kinds of interventions, all kinds of procedures, but still they're suffering. What I teach people at the onset about suffering is this, that suffering is about 10% what's happening in your life and 90% your way of looking at it. 10% what's happening and 90% how you're thinking about it and looking at it. And so even with chronic pain that's horrible, even with cancer, even with heart disease, irritable bowel syndrome, psoriasis, these very difficult and painful conditions, the stress equation, and stress is another word for suffering, is a very, very large part of the responsibility of the suffering in my life comes from my way of looking at things. So I have a real appreciation for Ernest Holmes and the work that you guys have been doing here for many, many years. What am I doing with my thoughts? What am I doing with my perspective? My way of perceiving the world changes the world. How I look at things transforms things. If I don't like something, if I struggle against it, I'm going to create more suffering for myself. My efforts to escape the things that I can't stand create more suffering for myself. My work as a therapist, as a teacher, not only have the mindfulness-based stress reduction clinic, I also teach this program online to a global community, where yesterday we spent a whole day in a meditation retreat, where 31 people came from every corner of the earth, ranging from Africa to Canada, to India, to Saudi Arabia, to Moscow, to Central America, every corner of the world. And we sat and spent the entire day together in the here and now, engaged in not only mindfulness practices, but loving kindness practices and compassion practices. And at one point at the end of the day, if we're doing the last loving kindness practice of the day, we could extend the loving kindness, first of all, to ourselves, but then to all those that have been in this group today, sitting and practicing and cultivating mindfulness, loving kindness and compassion. And in doing so, we've just encompassed the entire earth. We've got Muslims and Jews and Southern Baptists and Buddhists and atheists and soldiers and psychiatrists, all of them together. And what are we doing? We come together and we tell our stories, and we go to bring mindfulness, compassion, and awareness to our stories and our life. And how am I creating this unnecessary suffering in my life? How might I discover that? Most important, how can I stop creating unnecessary suffering in my life? What is my role in it? Well, we're not going to be able to discover our role in it unless we go to investigate suffering, our suffering. We're not going to discover what my role is in the pain equation until I start paying attention to the pain in ways that I never have been before. So people think that's nuts when they come to this program. I need help with my pain. I just want it to go away. I don't want to think about it. I don't want to feel it. I don't want anything to do with it. But if we can start bringing awareness, attention that's non-judgmental, that's non-striving, to investigate these things, I can start uncoupling the automatic linkages that go between my resistance and my avoidance, my hatred for this condition, the stories connected to it, I can start discovering how my way of working with things can make things worse for me. Thus, people discover healing in profound ways. I've also been providing mindfulness education to physicians and psychologists now for 14 years. Thousands have come through these retreat programs. They're learning how to be with their patients in a different way. How to be with their patients without just going immediately into fix-it mode, but how do we expand our hearts to actually be with the person we're with, to know them, to feel them, whatever it is they're going through. And let's just name then, that is what compassion is. My willingness to open my heart, to feel and be with the person I'm with. To feel their suffering, their stress, their pain, to not escape from it. And so at first, we could say, the very first piece of compassion, it's an act based on a recognition of another human being's suffering. It's not a feeling. It's an act, a recognition. If we look at the ancient roots of suffering, we see that calm means with, passion, suffering. With suffering. My willingness to be with this suffering. The second piece of compassion, then, we see that it's being kind and caring in response to that suffering. So I love that poem because it gives us a sense of both these qualities, this recognition that could be me. And it opens me up to a recognition that all human beings have these qualities. They will die. We do get sick. We do get old. We do find ourselves separated from those we love. And nobody escapes from those things. But the suffering that we have in relation to these things is optional. Then we could say healing is coming to terms with things as they are. This work of compassion is to turn towards and to be with my suffering, my pain, in a way that I no longer am fighting it and opening it, and my relationship to it changes. And this is very much true in a mindfulness-based stress reduction program. When people are coming into a program, they've been suffering from pain for decades. And they're sick of the medicines, they're sick of the procedures. What can I do to help with this pain? What they discover is they can come into a different relationship with this pain. And the pain is about 60 to 80% reduced at the end of just 8 weeks of mindfulness training. And that's pretty remarkable. Medicines are being reduced and interventions are reduced. Where they first discovered this, thinking about pain and in context of suffering and compassion, I understand that pain medicine began in World War II. All these men were being injured on the battlefront with grievous injuries. And they were sending these massive amounts of morphine to treat them. And they discovered these men did not need even like 30% as much morphine as they experienced, as they expected. And it didn't make sense. They've been treating these injuries for years. Factory workers that had lost arms and legs, they know how much suffering these men would need, but they didn't need it. So they sent researchers to investigate and talk, see what's happening. And they found out very quickly these men were not experiencing as much pain because they were on their way home. They're leaving the battlefields. They're no longer having to participate in the horror of war. And their pain was different. So pain isn't just something that's physical. It has a huge component that's mental. Suffering isn't just something that's physical. It has a huge component that is mental. Another very important piece of compassion is to remember, this is big, I really loved your meditation this morning, that we're all imperfect, right? All human beings are imperfect, except for Duchess and Don. The rest of us, imperfect. And as soon as you start recognizing your own imperfection, gosh, it's hard to judge other people. So at the very basis of mindfulness is non-judging awareness. There go your grievances right out the door. I'm not judging in this place of mindfulness. There is within it a kind of allowance and being with and recognition, non-blaming. So we could say it's a special kind of love that cares for suffering, to see what's happening and have a quality of care about that. And just to be with another person in this way is healing. Just to be with another person. That's a huge part of my work as a therapist, as a teacher. To be willing to receive another person's story, their pain, their suffering, in a way that they feel felt by me. They see they're seen and heard and known. And that in itself is incredibly healing. At that moment, I'm no longer alone. Right? At that moment, I'm with others. And I join a whole community of others. That all of us are here. All of us are in the same condition of imperfect. All of us have these problems. But when we start being with others in this way, things change in amazing ways without us having to try to do anything at all. One story that I got from Jack Kornfield about this was about a professor at Stanford going between classes across campus, and there was a throng of men, and there was a lot of noise and shouting. She saw they had some chimps in there, and it was quite a chaos. And normally, there's always nutty things going on the campus at Stanford, but she wanted to go see what this was about. And she saw what happened. The male chimp escaped, and they couldn't catch it. It was in the trees all over the building. And finally, they came up with an idea. They got the handlers, and they got the female chimp, and the male chimp never gets to be with the female chimp. So he's very interested in this female chimp. They bring her out, and sure enough, here he comes. And the men that are part of this rowdy group are really trying to make sure he gets his reward for this. Not a single woman in the group. And the female chimp that has now been put in this position, this woman psychologist immediately bonded with her and saw and felt she wants nothing to do with this. She was suffering. And her heart just immediately went out to this chimp, even though she was only looking at her from the side. Immediately her heart cracked open, and she felt deep compassion for that chimp. And at that moment, the chimp turned completely around, made eye contact with the psychologist, yanked her leash out of her handler's arm. They're very strong. Could have taken the arm with it. And went over and grabbed a hold of the psychologist's arm. And here they are, looking at this group of men. And they all got very quiet. They started looking at their feet. And then another woman walked up from the other side, and the chimp toddled over, got her hand, and they all three there stood there and watched as the men scattered in all directions, leaving nothing but the sheepish handlers apologetically receiving the chimp's leash. Now, there's compassion for you. She didn't do anything, did she? She was just there with her heart open. She felt that, and that chimp felt that. And in itself, it led to a transformation. If we can do that with other human beings, wow. This is what we're doing with some of the most amazing research in neuroscience now. It's called interpersonal neurobiology. Isn't that interesting? Big word. So they wire two people together. They have a baby nursing the mama. And they've got these electric hats on, and they're all going to the same computer. And they can watch the two brains interact with each other. And they'll notice when the mother's brain has attuned to, that's what they call it, the baby's brain, because they'll see it's vibrating at the same level and intensity at the exact same place as the baby's brain. They'll mark that on the computer graph. They're attuned. And then they'll notice something really remarkable, that the baby's brain will feel felt by the mother. And it'll respond, and it creates what they call resonance, and it's almost like a circle going between the two brains. And then they'll watch this combination of attunement and resonance, and they'll watch how the mama's brain will be changing the baby's brain. And they'll watch how the baby's brain is changing the mama's brain. This is at the level of brains. No words are being spoken. This is at the level of, what do we call it, good vibes? So you were talking about my generation earlier? There's good vibes and bad vibes. Well, this is the best of good vibes. We've opened our heart. We felt. When I open my heart, then you might be able to see my heart. And if you can quit trying to rescue me and help me and advise me and fix me, and just open your heart to be with me, this kind of resonance can happen. And this kind of possibility of healing happens. Another way we see this is very, very interesting, that research done by Richard Davidson at the University of Wisconsin in Madison, he's investigating, where do we first start feeling compassion and empathy? How old do you think we need to be before we start feeling empathy and compassion? In utero, probably. Absolutely. And what way they found they could measure it was 3-month-old babies. And so here's what they're doing. It's good research published. Babies watching an animation. No small thing to get the baby to watch the animation. It's 3 months old. Watching the animation. There's a ball trying to go up the hill, a little peak. It can't quite make it. Another ball comes from behind, pushes it over the peak, and it makes it. And the baby's brain lights up with happiness. Check it out. And then they'll show another animation. And the ball's making it up the hill. And it's going to make it. Then all of a sudden a big block comes from the other side and knocks it down. The baby's mind is filled with grief. They can measure these things. It changes the brain, particularly the limbic system. Sometimes, then we can say that if we work to cultivate our own compassion by turning to be with our own suffering and the suffering of others, it grows. And it's with us everywhere we go. And we see others, and we know them. We're not separate from them. When we start realizing we're all part of something much larger than ourselves. And also, we also start discovering, which something that's big for me in my work, and that is, I don't have to figure out how to heal somebody. That there is something inside of us that knows how to heal us. It's already there, right? We're all part of it. It's a much larger thing than all of us. Something inside of us knows how to heal our mind, knows how to heal our body. John Kabat-Zinn, who's one of my favorite teachers, says that healing is coming to terms with things as they are. Healing is coming to terms with things as they are. That if we trust emergence by going towards this place of woundedness, being with that, with loving kindness, mindfulness, and compassion, there will be something that emerges that's an important thing to be discovered. There's an insight. You can't accomplish insights. Nobody gets to them through some effort of will. But we can accomplish getting out of our own way, that we can let this work of spirit come through. Most of the time, though, we're trying to do something. And so we call mindfulness being, non-doing. Being in being mode rather than doing mode. And if we trust emergence, something will come through that needs to come through. Now, one of the first places I saw and heard this was my wife's story. Many years ago, she told me about her uncle. Remarkable thing. He was on Omaha Beach. He was injured by shrapnel as a 19-year-old boy. And there, for the rest of his life, 50 years later, he'd have a boil all of a sudden appear in his leg. It would get bigger and bigger, and all of a sudden a piece of steel would fall onto the floor. His body is healing him. This stuff is emerging. Nobody had to go dig that out. And I think of the same thing with some of the things we've got hidden on the inside. The shame, the dark thoughts, the malice, the grievances, the judgments, the hatred. These things that can be poisons to us. I mean, the hatred we feel for Hitler doesn't hurt Hitler, that's for sure. But these things that we carry can hurt us. So very often as people are doing meditation, opening up a space to be with themselves and experience what's going on in their minds, up will come some recognition of something they've been doing for a long time. Now they can come to terms with that. And maybe they can stop feeding this particular poison. And they do that by their own discovery. Nobody has to say, oh, that's a bad thing. They're going, wow, this is connected to my pain. This is connected to my anxiety, my depression. If we can just trust emergence and let our experience be just as it is and stop interfering with it, we'll realize we're already here. We're already there. There's no place we need to go. There's nothing more we need to get. That there's a wholeness within us that we may only discover as soon as we stop trying to get somewhere, trying to change things and fix things. Don, do you have any idea when I'm supposed to stop? I had no idea. I didn't even look at a clock. if you guys...
It's not 4 o'clock yet.
How am I doing? Do you want a little more? About 10 more minutes? Okay. You guys are still here. So say a little bit about what I do. Compassion, mindfulness. The research is enormous. You know, one of the things that I find very interesting right now is they're teaching mindfulness to children and to grade school kids as young as kindergarten. And they have found some ways in just 4 meetings to make enormous changes in the development of compassion in children. Very successfully. It's very good research. It's being funded to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars being poured into mindfulness and compassion research by the National Institute of Health for many years now. And they're training this. Now imagine as these kids go out into the school, as they go farther, are they going to be dealing with prejudice? Are they going to be hating people that look different than they are, that act different, that have to wear turbans, that can't come to Christmas like everybody else? Are they going to be mean? And are they going to be bullying them? No. How can we be with each other? One of my friends is doing this in a big way in Oakland public school system. This is a dangerous place. Kids generally don't make it to high school before they drop out. And she's right there. One little girl, I think she was a first grader, after she led the mindfulness practice, at the end of it, the little girl remained. Everybody else was left. And she came up to my friend with tears in her eyes and asked, "Is this real?" She had never in her life had an experience anywhere remotely akin to this. Is this real? Can I do this again? Can I cultivate this? Is another way of saying it. Yes. So mindfulness is already inside of us. Compassion is already inside of us. It comes in the womb. Loving kindness is already inside. Much of the time, I think all we need to do is try to do practices that bring this into being our life. So really, that's my work. I work also as a workshop leader, and I lead retreats at Spirit Rock, which is a Buddhist meditation center. Been doing that for many years. And one of the biggest works in these workshops is just to open up a space. And so we're going to have a whole day doing nothing but meditation. There's not going to be any dialogue. There's not going to be any eye contact. We'll sometimes do that for 24 hours. And what happens is we start opening up this space. We start seeing how we meddle with our lives. And we also start seeing, as when people come back together and they start talking, they go, oh my God, I have been caught up in some concept of me that has nothing to do with who I really am. The guy that's the head of the hospital, the guy that is the top doctor, the one that is the administrator, and they've got this kind of, largesse. And they start, they'll be the ones that often are sobbing most deeply during meditation practice. And the sobbing is like, it's not what you expect during meditation practice. I noticed nobody sobbed today, but it's happened a lot in my classes. And so in one of my classes a few years ago, a woman, we were doing a guided body scanning, about 35 minutes just being in the body, and she starts sobbing a few minutes into the practice. And as it goes, a few other people start sobbing. You just hear it. And so I'm leading the practice. It's all good. After class, she came to me. She says, I almost didn't come. This was our first class. I have irritable bowel syndrome, and my pain was so excruciating, I wasn't going to come tonight. But as I began crying, I made the most remarkable discovery. The pain subsided. There's a relationship between my pain and my tears. I never want to cry, but I couldn't help it. And I said, it's very interesting. And I wonder where that'll go if you keep looking. And a few minutes later, guess what? The other woman that started sobbing came up and told me the exact same story. Also irritable bowel syndrome. Wow, there's some kind of connection between my gut, my tears, and the things I hold back. Sometimes then compassion is a means to discover the truth of who we are. A truth that's in us, a truth we've been trying to escape from. Sometimes compassion is a kind of special healing agent that enables us to be with the truth, to quit running from it, to open to it, to listen to it, and to allow it to work through us. Sometimes compassion is all we have left. We don't have to figure out how to heal ourselves. We don't have to go through any rituals or practices to unite with the essence of who we are or be in touch with the essence of anybody else. We're already united with it. We're already united with the Spirit. The Spirit that animates all of us is animating all living things. We're already united with all of the people, all of the creatures, all other living things. And so they have that wonderful prayer in Native American, usually Lakota, says, all my relations, Omatakwiyasan, Matakwiyasan, all my relations. We're all related. We're related to the sun, the moon, and the stars, and the earth, and the water, and the creatures. All of it. We're all part of this together. We don't have to make it happen. Freedom, peace, love, already present. It's already who you are. You don't have to try to make them happen. Sometimes you just got to get out of the way and shut up and allow them to happen. It's not something to be acquired or attained. True freedom, essence, heart, and soul emerges as well when we get out of the way. That's a huge piece of what mindfulness is. So this workshop I'll do on Thursday is going to be providing real opportunity to dive into these practices, mindfulness practice, loving kindness practice, to cultivate these and how to do it so that you can know by your own experience what these are and how you can bring these into your life to investigate. Above all, it's an investigative practice. Its nature is kind, it's open, curious, non-judging. But here's another big word, non-striving. I'm not trying to get somewhere. I'm being with things as they are. That's when insights come. That's when we get a little free. So, one more little poem from one of my favorite poets these days, Dana Faulds. Let go of self-judgment. the old learned ways of beating yourself up for each imagined inadequacy. Allow the dialogue within the mind to grow friendlier and quiet. Shift out of inner criticism and life suddenly looks very different. I can say this because I make the choice 100 times each day to release the voice that refuses to acknowledge the real me. What's needed here isn't more prodding towards perfection, but intimacy, seeing clearly and embracing what I see. What's needed here isn't more prodding towards perfection, but intimacy, seeing clearly and embracing what I see. Love, not judgment, sows the seeds of tranquility and change. So let's just close our eyes for about a minute. Very, very brief opportunity to allow some of these words and poems and ideas to touch whatever needs to be touched inside of you. And offering gratitude to Duchess, making this time possible, to this beautiful congregation that you get to share and grow, heal, and discover who you are in. For this breath, for teachings that come to us that may transform us. May all beings be at peace. So thank you, everyone. It was wonderful to spend time with you.
Thank you, Steve. Again, he has the workshop on Thursday night. You can sign up in Loftus Hall or get a book or just hug the guy because he's so available to that. It is at this time of our service that what we do is our offering our tithe, and how we do that here is we hold our gift in our hand and place it over our heart.